Inspiration, clarity, confidence, and wholehearted business strategy. Welcome to Your Next Chapter, the podcast especially for women in their 40s and beyond who know that business and personal development go hand in hand. Tune in each week for marketing, mindset, and personal growth strategies, along with inspiring stories from women around the world who are creating new businesses and lives that are personally fulfilling and financially rewarding. If you're looking to create a business and life you love, you're in great company. Let's find out what will unfold in your next chapter. I'm your host, Angela Rasmus, and I'm so delighted that you're here. Well, hello there and welcome to episode 46 of the Your Next Chapter podcast. This is Angela. Well, today we get to have a conversation with an inspirational artist by the name of Colleen Darby. Now, Colleen has got the most magnificent story to share, a story that really shows you how important it is to live life connected to your purpose and how our own experiences can certainly shape what we are then motivated and inspired to create. Now, Colleen has always been an artist, but from a very young age, she was given the message that she really needed to earn a living. And the suggestion was that perhaps art wasn't quite the way to do that. So she went down a different pathway into the marketing area. There was always tinges of creativity and artistic design within these roles, but she wasn't necessarily following her true passion. But as we know, those underlying desires don't always go away. And in fact, I think it's really good that they don't. There was a point in Colleen's life where she was working as a marketing director, and sometimes when these negative things happen, they can actually be a catalyst for real positive change. In Colleen's case, there was a very big pay cut, and she sat down with her husband one evening, and instead of accepting what had happened and just going with it, she actually spoke out loud what it is that she really wanted to be, that dream of becoming an artist again. Well, there's strange power when you actually get really connected to the things that are most important to you. And it wasn't too far into the future that Colleen found herself as an artist in residence in a children's hospital in the oncology ward, where she was brightening up those patients' days with her creativity. Now, there's lots of other facets to this story. It doesn't just stop there, but even if it did, that would be a wonderful place for it to do so. But there was much more to Colleen's story that she shares with us in this conversation. And ironically, to a degree, it also includes her own significant brush with cancer when she was 4 months pregnant. Now, these days, Colleen can look back with hindsight and can see that very much that experience as an artist in residence, but then her own cancer experience have really been the catalyst for her to step into her own next chapter, the role that she's living now. Now, I'm not going to spoil the whole story because I really want you to leap in and listen to this, but her determination to brighten up the insides of wards where people are in hospital was the real catalyst for her. She had a conversation one day with someone and mentioned how beautiful it was outside, but this particular patient said, "It always looks the same in here." And LandEscapes were developed as a result when her creativity and also her entrepreneurial skills were honed and developed and came to the fore when she got deeply involved in a Kickstarter campaign to make her vision a reality. She's quite a sensational woman, and I know you're going to enjoy this conversation, and I hope that it too acts as a catalyst for you. It inspires you to take that dream that you may have buried down deep back inside and bring it back out into the light so that you too
in 2013, I remember sitting down and looking at the calendar and realizing that in August I would be turning 50 years old, and 10 days later my youngest was leaving for college, and having a real heavy heart and thinking, wow, either that's going to be a really sad and depressing time for me, or it can be a time where I actually start living out some of my own dreams. And with that, I thought, well, I've always dreamt of being a full-time artist. So I'm going to take a month off from my day job, and I'm going to go on a painting sabbatical, and I'm going to go paint. And but then thinking about it, I realized that I didn't want to just go paint for my licensing agent, and paint fruits and vegetables. I really wanted to paint with a purpose. So as I thought about it, a memory came back to me of a time when I worked as an artist in resident at a children's hospital. I worked on the oncology floor, and one beautiful sunny spring morning, I walked into a patient's room and said, "Oh, it's such a beautiful day outside." And the patient looked up at me from bed and said, "It always looks the same from here." And I remember in that moment, I was embarrassed because I didn't really understand her perspective. And then also thinking, you know what, why doesn't every patient have a room with a beautiful sunny view? So when deciding what to go about painting, I decided to paint just that. I was painting a windows view for a hospital patient, and they would include positive messages and words of encouragement, and they would all be of sunny landscapes and would have a road or a path in the painting to draw the viewer in.
Oh, I love that idea of painting with a purpose. That really resonates, that you have a talent, you have a skill, you have a passion that you were following for yourself, but then you recognize that you can actually draw those two together, not only be pursuing your own dream, but actually making a real difference for somebody else at the same time.
I know it's really, I think when you really start, I didn't use my painting talents for years and years and years. I was busy raising kids and worrying about, making my bills at the end of the month, and really kind of lost the whole art thing. So this was just a huge gift for me, and then to be able to turn around and try to make a positive difference in someone else's day was huge.
Yeah, I love that. And you said, or I've read that you launched a Kickstarter campaign, a view for a room. I love the play on words, transforming those views. I think that the words that I saw was every patient needs a room with a view.
Yes. I think that was one of the most important things I learned. I worked as an artist in resident for 3 years on the oncology floor. And, when you're in a hospital for long periods of time, think about it. You may have a view to a cityscape with a brick walls and nothing of nature. And most often the walls are painted very drably, and there's nothing to excite, your mind. So I believe that the paintings are a way to offer a patient an escape from the hospital environment and take them to another place.
And that's how I love how you've, rather than calling them landscapes, they're land-escapes. That was really clever. And when I was looking through, you've got that central theme of always there being a path, like a way forward, moving into the future, the new possibilities for that person. Was that really aimed to trigger the imagination and take them away from what they're experiencing at the time?
Absolutely. And a lot of the paintings, they're all collaged with positive messages and words of encouragement. And some are much more apparent than others. But you know how subliminal advertising works. Like, you don't know that you're seeing something or being affected by something. But I believe that if you surround yourself with positive messages, words of encouragement, uplifting images, that it can definitely affect your mood and your well-being.
I think there's absolutely no doubt about that. I mean, look at what's the alternative. Imagine that on one hand you could be staring at a blank wall, feeling rather sorry for yourself, without a doubt. Or on the other side, you could be looking at the scene that draws you in and takes you on a journey of possibility. That's the feeling that I got when I was looking on your website at the galleries and seeing the different paintings. And really encourage everybody to visit Colleen's website. The link will be in the show notes as well, so you can see some of these pieces for yourself. But let's talk, if I may, about the Kickstarter campaign, because this wasn't just you waking up one day and walking to your easel. There was a lot involved to actually bring this particular vision to life. Can you talk us through how that worked?
Oh, sure. And Kickstarter is an amazing platform for anyone who has a creative idea and wants to, first of all, get great exposure for the idea, and also educate people about what they're trying to do. So I started planning the Kickstarter campaign, as I said, back in March of 2013. And it's not just, if you want to do it well, you don't just throw up a Kickstarter campaign in 2 weeks. Mine took a lot of planning. They offer Kickstarter School first. So first I went and took the Kickstarter School, which is just a little video tutorial. And then I thought, well, why reinvent the wheel? I'm going to go and research the most funded painting campaigns and see what they did and what they did right, and take from some of those campaigns what I think would work for what I was trying to do. And so after reviewing that, I started putting together all my incentives to get people to, help and join in and help with my mission. So one of the things that I did, which was a little bit different, was it's very important to have a compelling video. So I didn't really want to upfront a lot of the costs. So I talked with my videographer, and I think he wanted like $800 to put together the video. And I said, look, instead of doing that, what if I paid you a percentage of whatever we earned? So right there, it was an incentive for him. He had a vested interest into creating a better video, and he ended up making, I think it was $500 more than he originally had quoted me. So it worked out for him. It worked out for me, and that was really kind of a unique thing that I did for the campaign.
That's real entrepreneurial spirit coming through very strongly there, and for him as well.
Right. But again, I think it's super important to be very passionate about what you're doing, because the campaign, as I said, started in March. It ended in, the planning started in March. I launched on my 50th birthday because I didn't want it to be about my birthday. I wanted it to be about the campaign. And I had a big white party, and everybody came, and I had done sketches for all the paintings, and they were all out on display, and it was just a real party atmosphere, and that was so much fun. And then about a month later, I left on the painting sabbatical and was feverishly painting for about a month, and I wanted to have 20 paintings done at the end of the month. I only made it to about 12 complete paintings, 15 in another 3 that were, somewhat complete. So then coming back to reality, I had to finish 5 more paintings and find time to fit that in between holidays and kid things and work. And so I eventually finished everything by August of 2014, because I couldn't do a lot of the incentive paybacks until all the paintings were complete, because one of the incentives was a book, and I needed all the paintings completed before I could do the book. And of course, everything has to be photographed. So it was a long process.
That takes a lot of commitment, and one of the things that I've often heard and strongly believe in is that, any venture that we're doing, whether it be creating a business or following a real drive for a passion and a vision, as you did, it can be hard. I can imagine there, as you were saying, 12 completed, 3 more somewhat completed, then reality hit. Oh my goodness, there's another 5 to go, and I've got to fit this all in around what I'm doing. But if we are passionate about the thing, whatever the thing is, the business, the venture, the contribution we want to make, that's what gives us that fuel to keep going through, would you say?
Oh, absolutely. I feel so passionate about what I'm doing that it doesn't really feel like work.
Yeah.
Even though I may be up and painting till all hours of the night. I feel like as the deadline grew closer and I could see that things were, almost complete, that it just spurred me on even more.
And there's a lot of conversations on the same ilk. Now, when you were thinking about, right, it's the big birthday, your son going to college, and trying to find that, or looking for that calling, I guess, at the time, as to how you were going to transform yourself and the contribution you were to make, looking inwards and trying to find what that was rather than looking outwards to discover. How do you feel about that idea of it being a real internal journey to find that calling and to connect to it?
Oh, you know what? I believe that we're all born with certain unique talents. And as I said, for years, I didn't use those talents. I focused on other things. And the moment that I actually allowed myself to go back to what I loved, then things started to happen. And when they start to happen and you're on that right path, then doors open up for you, and things happen with ease.
I hear that so often, and I can hear that conviction in your voice as well. So that's that feeling of flow when it started to happen. It's probably when you got started, you couldn't imagine how much was going to fall into place for you. Did you have any doubt about the ability to bring this to life? That's an emotion that seems to hold a lot of women back from stepping into this type of dream. Did you have any battle with that, or have any thoughts along those lines that you had to work on?
Well, I think anytime that I was feeling some self-doubt, that I would turn to people that were close to me, that were my biggest supporters and encouraged me. But there's always moments of self, I would think, oh my gosh, these paintings, are they going to be any good? Is anyone going to believe what I'm trying to say? Of course, I think everybody has those moments, but the passion and the drive were so much stronger than the voice.
That's a great description. So much stronger than the voice. So, and I actually had another interview yesterday with a woman, Tara Moore, who wrote the book Playing Big, and we were talking about that exact concept, that there's a couple of voices that are inside. One is the critic, which is concerned about keeping you safe and what might go wrong, and stop doing this, I'm worried. But then there's the other voice, which Tara calls it the inner mentor, which really focuses on, as you're describing, the passion, the desire, the outcome, the difference, the impact. And it's a quieter voice, but it's quite an insistent voice as well, and that's the one that can pull us through when we are shackled with the self-doubt that always comes up. No one walks through life just completely confident all the time. So it sounds as though you were very connected to that internal mentor who could really envision what you were creating.
Absolutely. And as I was saying before about the things and doors open for you, I had so many experiences during the campaign and the planning of the parties, and that just people were so. I had one experience where I was looking for a place to have the opening party, the kickoff party, and I walked into this room, and someone had suggested that I could use this particular room. And when I walked in, hanging from the ceiling were all these enormous industrial windows. And of course, the theme of the Kickstarter campaign was a view for a room, transforming healthcare spaces. So these giant windows were assigned to me. And of course, the room was all white. And I had a white party because I wanted to mimic the hospital environment. And so this space was donated to me.
Now, that is amazing.
And then I said, well, I need a caterer. I would like to have some, hors d'oeuvres and things like that. And so I was playing telephone tag with one of the women that someone suggested I contact. Well, I couldn't reach her, so I just sent her an email, and I attached the link to the video. And she sent me a response email and said that she had just been crying because she had just lost her brother-in-law. And when he was in bed, he was dying of cancer. And when he was in bed, she would go to the window and explain what she could see out the window.
Wow, that's one of those synchronicity moments that we hear so much about. That must have really reinforced. I mean, you didn't actually need more resolve because you were so connected to your passion, but that must have just been just another reinforcement and confirmation that you were heading in the right direction.
Definitely, and those are just a couple of examples. But again, it happened throughout, and it continues to happen.
So tell me, when you were at that party, when you were launching, when the things that you were doing were all coming together, how did that feel?
Almost like I was in a dream, but so fulfilling. And seeing people really resonate with what I was trying to do, and it was so rewarding.
That word comes up so often, that concept of fulfillment. I mean, we can use our talents and our gifts in all different sorts of ways, but when we really connect to a purpose like this, it really takes it into a different category, doesn't it?
Yes. And one of the, before I went to work as an artist in resident, I remember I was working as a marketing director for a company, and my salary and my hours were cut in half with one day's notice. And I remember going out for dinner with a friend that night, and saying, what am I going to do with the rest of my life? And I said, I would like to do something more with my artwork. I would like to give back to the community and maybe even go into healthcare. And the very next morning, I got an email for a call for artists to work in this newly formed arts and healthcare program.
You can't help but think that there must be some sort of benevolent force out there that was eavesdropping on your conversation that night.
Well, and I believe that. I think too, when you actually say out loud what you've always known in your heart, but you've kind of denied, and you actually say it out loud. This is what I want. I'd like to do more with my artwork. I had been, not using, my talent for years and doing other things. So I just think that when you use that, and it's also not expecting anything back. When I went to the hospital, I would draw for people. I'd give away paintings all day long. And it's like having this non-attachment to what you're doing. With the art you're creating, or if it's good or bad, you're just creating to make others happy. And it's really quite different.
Oh, that is a concept that I absolutely resonate with as well. It's that idea of releasing attachment, of letting go of expectation, of putting in your best work, or putting your, as they say, your best foot forward, or taking that first step down a pathway that is really calling you, and not having an expectation about how it's going to look, or it must be right, or it has to succeed in this type of way. I think we have such a limited view of what's possible for us, because we can only really look at our past experience and extrapolate from there. Where if we actually open up to possibility, goodness knows what's going to happen.
I completely agree with you, because I could never have imagined myself working in a hospital environment, ever. My sister is a nurse. I mean, that was her thing. And I was never comfortable in a hospital setting. So had I ever been able to imagine myself, doing something like that? No.
That's the key, isn't it? And in fact, I work with a gorgeous mindset coach who I've been working with for a couple of years, and those are some of the conversations that we've had. Could have you imagined 5 years ago, Angela, where you are now? And I used to run a marketing agency, funnily enough, which I'd built up from the dining room table as just a freelance consultant to a stage where I bought an office and I had 4 staff and we were looking after clients all over Australia. And when I was at that point, when I started, I couldn't imagine that happening. But then looking where I am now, where I've really pivoted into my own next chapter and I'm much more comfortable supporting entrepreneurial women who are more purpose-driven, I never would have thought that I'd be here doing this now and having conversations like this with people like yourself. We just can't. We don't have the ability to pull out the crystal ball. So that's where you were speaking before about the doors start to open and things do start to flow. Perhaps not always in the timing that we want, but that's where the trust comes in, doesn't it?
Yes. And being a pretty driven person, I like things to go on my time frame. So,
I know that feeling.
Yes. Patience becomes, a virtue. Really, it is. It is a virtue, and having faith that everything happens for a reason and the timing will be when it's ready.
Oh, that makes me giggle, because one of the pictures that I saw of one of your paintings with the little turtles.
Oh, yes.
With the word patience. I think I'm going to put that one on my wall. Now, can I ask, Colleen, if we can delve for a moment, because you actually had your own health threat when you were pregnant, and you had your own brush with cancer. How did that experience? I think I remember reading you were talking about how colouring at that stage was really opening some peace for you. Can you talk about that for a moment? Because it feels as though it's very connected to the type of work you're doing today.
Oh, sure. Well, and back in 1995, that daughter that just went off to college when I turned 50, when I was 4 months pregnant with her, I was diagnosed with malignant melanoma. And it's difficult enough to be diagnosed, have a cancer diagnosis, but when you're pregnant and you're not only in fear of for your own life, but for the life of your unborn child. So that was it was a very scary, lonely time in my life, and I remember just being completely consumed by the diagnosis. I mean, cancer was my very first thought in the morning and my last thought at night before I went to bed. And I remember just longing for some normalcy. I just wanted to be normal again and not have all these, bad thoughts in my mind. And at the time, my older daughter was about 18 months old, and she came up to me and offered me a crayon one day and asked me to color with her. And it was during that coloring session that I actually forgot cancer for the first time since I was diagnosed. And I remember just being blown away because I had just gotten so into that creative flow state that I was able to forget for a little while, just for a few minutes. But I remember just being so thankful that I had that few minutes of just peace again.
Yeah, of grace, absolutely. And so, what happened from there when you actually discovered that? Were you a painter at that stage? Were you already painting?
No, I wasn't. I occasionally I would. No, I didn't. I really hadn't painted since I was in college. So coloring with my daughter was pretty much what I used to use to help me get through that difficult time.
And so that then, as you were moving forward from there, it sounds as though it triggered something inside that connected you back to that point of creativity, and then I guess
Yes.
over time it would have blossomed from there.
Yes, and when my daughters were young, I did a lot of children's illustration,
Yeah.
very whimsical, fun illustrations. But then it really wasn't until I went to work at the hospital that the depth of feeling that are in my paintings today, it wasn't at that level back when I was in my 30s.
And that's the thing that I see so often is that as we, and I'll use the term quite happily, as we get older and wiser, and as we begin to, I think in some ways, even though life feels so busy, I mean, we're juggling so much all the time, but there's a little bit of an internal slowing down that can begin to happen where we start to think and question and wonder about the things that are possible for us. And I love that description, how, the deeper, more emotional side of your painting started to come through as you were in that as the resident artist, and then obviously the work that you're doing now. Did that feel just like it flowed? Was it a natural progression, or was it something that you really thought about?
It was just a natural progression. I think that after working at the hospital, it brought out a new sensitivity in me, and you look at things a little bit differently. And just having my own life experience and having been touched by cancer when I was pregnant, it leaves almost a wound, maybe, in your mind. So I think that working at the hospital, I really understood where the patients and their families found themselves, and I just became more aware of my own feelings.
Yeah, that's the one, isn't it? It's being open to what's true for you. And no one can tell you what that looks like. No one can tell you this is the way you need to create, build your business, make your impact, make your contribution. It really is that internal tuning to what it is that's calling you, that you need to respond to. And what does it look like today? What's happening in your artistic life today?
Well, we're working on right now raising money to get the paintings put into a local hospital. But also the next step is that I'm working on getting fiscally sponsored so that I can take the LandEscapes series on a traveling exhibit to cancer hospitals throughout the country. I'd like to go to a different hospital over the course of 12 months and actually find a sponsor who will donate the 20 paintings in reproduction format to donate to hospitals that don't have great art collections.
That sounds like a fabulous idea. Do you have? So, what's the planning around that? What's give us a sneak preview behind the closed door? What's happening to make that a reality?
Okay. Well, first of all, as an artist, I can attain a fiscal sponsorship through a nonprofit organization. I have to apply, and I'm in the process of doing that right now. But once I get I'm fiscally sponsored, then I can approach corporate sponsors, and they would pay the 501c3, and they would get the tax benefit, and then the 501c3 will pay me.
Okay, that's being Australian. Those, yeah, it's a very different approach, but that's okay. No, it's understanding that there's things that you need to learn, and I guess none of this stuff, is just knowledge that you have. And the point that I'm wanting to make with this is that there's steps that we need to take to turn any dream into a reality. And sometimes we can sit there and go, it's hard. I don't know how. But what you're showing us is that when you work out the steps, you can get active and actually make them happen. It doesn't matter if they're what the challenge is, but we've got the ability to be motivated by, again, that vision that pulls us forward, that inspiration that pulls us forward. We can roll up our sleeves and just work this stuff out.
Yes. And actually, where I learned about all this was I became part of a group of other artists. So also joining a group of similar like-minded people, also everyone has knowledge that you don't have. And for a long time, I felt like I was on an island and I was discovering things all on my own. So now that I've been introduced to this group of other fabulous artists who have so much more knowledge than I do in certain areas, it's opened up a whole new mindset for me.
Oh, that is such a great point you made. Thank you. I'm a huge believer in the power of community. I think sometimes, we feel like we're an island, or we feel like we should be able to work it all out ourselves. But absolutely not. Asking for help is probably one of the most powerful things we can do.
Yes, agreed. And you know what, I think too, when you find that group of friends or other artists or other writers or whatever your passion might be, that it is, you have an enormous resource for not only collaboration, but for ideas and really positive, honest feedback.
Yeah, that's a big one, isn't it? And to be able to take that feedback and listen to it and decide, what am I going to do with it? Am I going to change, or am I going to stick to my path? I mean, it's such an individual thing. How is that a virtual type of gathering that you have? Are you connected online, or do you get together face to face? How does it work?
Well, it started off as you had to, what word am I looking for? It was a call for artists to be in this boot camp workshop of artists as an entrepreneur. And so they selected 42 people to come in and get together. So it was a group of like-minded artists all trying to be entrepreneurs, and it was run by New York Foundation for the Arts, which it was just so informative and interesting, and I've learned so much, and I feel like now I can take my business to the next step.
That's brilliant to be in that sort of atmosphere. And actually, that makes me wonder, when we were talking earlier about the idea of releasing expectations and just moving forward, but when you're wanting to take your skills and actually turn them into a business, and I love that expression, artists as entrepreneurs, did you feel any sort of resistance or any concern about turning your passion or monetizing your message or your mission? Was that a challenge, like in your mind or in your heart? How did you approach that?
Well, I think you don't want to jump overboard and give up your day job overnight. It's something that I'm doing gradually. I've worked I was working full time for a bank, and I'm in the marketing department there. But now I'm down to 4 days a week, and I work remotely. So it's really freed up a lot of my time, and I have more time to focus on my own business. But I would say definitely follow your passion, but don't quit your day job. We all have bills to pay, so don't, do anything drastic, but, do it gradually. There's a balance.
I think that's really good advice. There is so much, and I'm on a little bit of my soapbox here because I get a bit cranky about the social media that we're so often surrounded by, that suggests that you can change everything overnight, that you can create this incredible income stream almost by clicking your fingers. And the reality is, and I'm an optimist by nature, don't get me wrong, but the reality is, as you were speaking, it does take time. And I love your example of that gradual transition. That's a concept that I often call the investor client. So the bank is invested in you so that you can continue doing your art, and that balance of the 4 days to 3 days to 2 days over time will change.
Right.
And I guess it gives you a feeling of freedom, because you know that you've got the economic boxes ticked over here, so that the creativity can flow more because you don't have that stress.
Absolutely. And the other thing too is it does take discipline. I mean, it can't
Yeah.
be, you have to be the one sitting down and doing the things you don't necessarily love to do. Like the accounting part of it for me is awful.
Blah.
But yeah, I know I have that stack of receipts I have to go through. But again, it's discipline, and every day can't be a party.
Yeah, bugger that one, isn't it? No, I feel the same way about the books, but yes, if I don't do that, then I don't get paid. So I have a wonderful bookkeeper now and an accountant, but yeah, I had the blinkers on there for quite some time.
Huh.
So imagine moving forward. So imagine that we've got this fiscal sponsor, as you're saying, and your beautiful paintings have been turned into prints, and they're gracing the walls of many of those oncology units and other areas in hospitals. So that, let's just imagine that that's happened for a moment and how good that will feel. What do you think might be the next frontier for you? Is the real move into the hospitals? Do you feel that that is the area that you want to continue to focus on, or do you suspect that other things might open up for you as well?
Well, I don't close my mind to anything. Anything is possible. But definitely, I do feel a commitment to the arts and healthcare field, and growing that and helping that grow. When I first became an artist in resident and we walked out onto the hospital floors, the 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 staff looked at us like we were, who are you crazy people walking around with your little carts and your paintbrushes, but within months they had really grown to rely on us. So I feel like what I'm doing today is, again, it's about educating people about the important role that environment plays on well-being and healing. And so I definitely see myself still in that field. And I've talked before about possibly setting up a studio within a hospital environment where artists can come and work and show their work, because there are so many blank walls in the hospital. Why not fill them with an artist's work, and paint live, and have the staff and the patients and families enjoy the creative process.
That would be beautiful. And I love the feeling that I get so strongly when I'm hearing you talk, is that concept that our why, our reason for being, for doing what we do, is often so much bigger than the actual medium or the actual product or service that we're creating. So when you're expressing that creativity through paint and canvases, but that bigger why about educating people about the role that the environment and well-being plays in healthcare, that's the big picture, and that has so many facets to it that it could really just expand out into so many areas.
Agreed. That's why I don't close my mind to the possibilities. I'm open.
Oh yeah, my mind is dancing and thinking what it would be like here in Australia with that same sort of approach. But the thing that I find most fascinating about your story is that it's the impetus with which you had this desire and you made it happen. That you recognized that perhaps it wasn't going to be super easy. There was things you needed to learn, but you really connected to that desire. So if you're thinking about the women that are listening to our conversation right now, who may have that kernel of desire themselves, that idea, that little ember that needs to be nourished and tended so it can flare up, what would you say to them?
Quiet your mind down and listen, and go back to whatever it was that you loved to do when you were young. And that's usually the what you were meant to do. And for me, it was, I grew up in a town where you could not really make a living as an artist. So I was told, oh, well, you need to go into advertising or marketing and do something where you can actually earn a living. So the artist thing was just kind of put on the back burner. But I really believe that, that's what you're meant to do. Will you use your talents to make a positive difference in the world? That's what living a purpose-filled life is about.
Oh, that is beautiful. That's exactly how I feel. When you use your talents to make a difference, that's what a purpose-filled life is like. And as we've talked about so thoroughly in this conversation, we don't have to define how that's going to look. We have no idea where it may lead us. It's just a case of taking that first step, isn't it?
Yes, it is. And it's scary. I mean, when I first worked in the hospital, I was scared. And there were still days I would be off for a little while and then I'd have to go back, and I would always have that apprehension and a little bit of fear. But the minute I got back into the flow and enjoying and being around the patients and their families and seeing the difference it made, the fear goes away.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, Colleen, it's been a delight to delve into the journey that you've taken, and to, this sort of conversation is what we need to inspire other women to take that step, to reconnect to like that, to quiet your mind and to reconnect back to what you loved and what you were told possibly wasn't possible back then. But there's nothing stopping you from taking those first steps now. Where can we find you online so that this inspiration can continue for myself and our listeners?
Oh, sure. I have a website. It's ColleenDarbyDesigns.com. I'm on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook under Colleen Darby Designs.
Fantastic. Well, we'll make sure that we pop all those links up so that we can go and our ladies can go and have a look at what you're doing, and perhaps even send you an email and get some more details about this. I'd love to. My little part of my mind's going, Australia, you need this. So who knows, maybe we've planted the seed for another artist who might be listening right now.
Absolutely, I hope so.
That's brilliant. Thank you so much for your time, my darling.
And Angela, thank you.
I'm glad we got there. And for our listeners, I sincerely hope that you can hear the message that is in the conversation that Colleen and I have had today. Just give yourself some space and some time to think, what is that kernel that's inside of me? What is that idea or that desire or that passion that I've got that's been put on the back burner, as Colleen described, whilst life happened? But now it's your turn. Now it's your time. That's what a next chapter is all about. It's actually reprioritizing so that you are first equal in your life and you can start exploring and expanding these talents that are lying there dormant perhaps in you at the moment. I'd love to hear what it is for you that's going to unfold in your next chapter. Love getting emails, hearing how these conversations have sparked something for you. And I wish you every success as you take those first steps forward. So thanks so much for sharing your time with us today. This is Angela Raspis. I'll be back again very soon, and take care. Thanks for listening to the Your Next Chapter podcast. If you've enjoyed this episode, please let me know. Pop over to angelaraspis.com to subscribe to the show and leave a review. And whilst you're there, you can also enjoy valuable free resources, including show notes and downloads, along with the Next Chapter community, where you can connect with other wholehearted women on the same journey as you. We'd love to welcome and support you as your next chapter unfolds. See you next time.